Hello, 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 hello. Hello. I don't know whether
Hello.
that's working. Let's
I
see if
wasn't
it
ready.
is.
I've been telling you I was ready. I wasn't. I can't even find my type of it. Oh, there it is.
Ah, dear. I,
What?
I meant to send two messages before I went like, oh, where are you going? What are you doing down there?
Now,
Am I going to have to... What are you doing?
it's fine.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We've got
Meant to
me,
do that.
Mikey, who's sat on his seat, and Yann, who can't sit on seats.
Has learned what chairs are for.
Whoa!
How is everybody?
I
How are
hope
you, Michael?
I'm good. I've been cranking away. I've got some. Well, I've been teasing some screenshots over on the Discord. One
Are you
screenshot.
ready to talk about what you've been doing? Are you ready to talk about what you've been doing?
That's all I've been doing. Next part of the Blender Creative Series is on its way.
Yay! Well, I
Learned
was going to
today
say,
that
what is the next
curves.
part?
Yeah, it's all about mesh making. So we're going to have it's all split up, as some of you might know. So that let's backtrack completely, just in case there is someone watching who doesn't know what the Blender Creative Suite is. So the Blender Creative Suite is going to be a suite of courses covering pretty much everything Blender can do. So on that front, we've already got the grease pencil out, we've already got a basic introduction out, and we've already got procedural materials out. Geometry is coming out soon, and that's all about modeling. Now, even though we're going to be focused a lot on the modeling, we will also be doing a tiny bit of materials and things like that just to make the models look pretty as we go along, and
Oh,
we'll be presenting them. But there will be later sections that focus on texturing. And rather than making students make a model and then have to texture it, when we actually get to the texturing parts, we will actually have a model to unwrap and then texture. And obviously we've got procedural texturing already there. Geometry nodes is a big one. I'm going to be speaking with Erin about that sometime during this week. I know he's been having his own office renovation at the moment, which is it looks absolutely fantastic. I've still got breeze blocks. We're getting there. Windows are almost in.
it's getting Windows soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
It's
Windows.
very fancy.
Linux just wouldn't fit in the garage doors, and the yeah, and yeah, Erin's really interested in getting geometry nodes nailed. If you didn't know, the new splash screen on Blender 2.93 was done by Erin himself. So I know
That
that
is
is
exciting.
awesome. Yeah.
So, Michael, if people wanted to get the Blender Creator Series, when could they do that and where?
So lifetime backers will gain access during the week. I'll ping them on the Discord on their
You're
lifetime
answering
members.
the next course. I'm talking about the whole thing because the idea is you guys can
Oh.
buy the Blender Creative Suite as a bundle of courses, and as each course is released, it's going to come out. Or you could just buy the ones you want. So maybe you don't really want one on meshes, but you do want one on grease pencil. Well, you just buy that one.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
Michael, when can people buy the Blender Creative Suite?
Right now.
And hello, Brian, and hello, Melicon, hello, Rosrick. Right now, do you have a link for them?
I don't. Do you?
No.
I am.
It's been a
I
long day.
I will go get a link now and send it into the chat. But we've also got another awesome announcement.
We do, and I've sort of teased it in the doobly doo. If I may borrow the Green Brothers dooblings, we are relaunching our Creativity for Coders course. This was a short little course we had on Udemy for a bit when we were working with a different company, but the rights have reverted to us, so I've re-edited it, and it's going to be live. When shall it go live, Michael?
I think, first of all, I'm going to paste in the Discord. So if you're not part of our Discord, come over and join us there. It is the best way of getting hold of us. Literally, hands down, it is the best way. And in
I mean, short
terms,
of turning up at our house, but that's weird.
that is a bit weird. Have you launched it yet?
No, I'm saying when shall I launch it?
Now. Do it now.
Done. Yes, publish course. Okay.
Woohoo!
So for some reason that's not doing that. Oh, here we go.
Professionals. So,
And then I press this button. Okay, the course is now launched, and you can find it here. No, you can't. That's not the thing. Wait. Also, I'm not sure if I'm going to be allowed to actually post a link in here. I should be able to because I'm a mod, but let's find out.
yeah, you should be able to. Of course,
Can people see that link?
I can't yet. But then again,
Well,
it's the way YouTube is.
It is the way YouTube is. So a quick rundown. This is a short little 2.5 hour course, and it's designed specifically to get the skill of creativity up and running. The very first section is laying some groundwork and discussing the theory of creativity, where I'm drawing on both my education and my theatre background. And we're going to talk about things like why creativity is best thought of as a skill, why creativity is easier for children than it is for adults. And even as I say that, that sounds very pseudoscience and babbly, but we're going to root that in the elasticity of the brain and the way the brain improves and myelinates through adolescence. And then we're just going to go from there into much less academic topics and just helpful little exercises. Mikey actually appears in the videos. A much younger Yann and Mikey.
Yeah, Mikey without a beard.
Mikey without a beard, which was terrifying when I was editing the video.
It may be, that I end up having to shave this off. I've been trying to verify myself through an automated system for some financial stuff, and it doesn't do well with beards. Could I increase
you're trying to verify yourself?
I don't know. It's part of their security measures, and when I actually put my face up against it, it goes, "No, you're not human." Like, cheers. Yeah, I'm going to just be able to be closer to my mic. I might even turn Yann down because you are very hot today, Yann.
I am.
Yes.
I am actually very, very warm.
So it was great fun with the creativity course. One of the best games we play. Am I in the yes and one?
You're in the yes and one and the once upon a time one. Although once upon a time is kind of an extension of yes and.
Yeah. So great games. You could do it with yourself, but you could probably do it with anybody in your household just to get those creative juices flowing. That's the real thing. So
the way we structure the course is the first section is the theory. It's quite short. The second one is like foundational practices on how to treat work as play. Because if you're playing, you're tricking your brain and you're able to generate ideas before you edit them. And that's really the problem. As an adult, your risk assessment is very highly developed, usually. And I'm generalizing. But what that means is you tend to analyze an idea before it's formed. So if I say write a poem, you're going to spend hours just on the first line, unless you're used to poetry and all the rest of it. Whereas if we're playing a game, and Mikey and I are just doing silly rhyming things, you'll probably come up with the next rhyme really easily because we're not analyzing, we're playing. So that's the first major chunk. The second one is how to work in a team, how to be creative, how to collaborate creatively. Because if you're in a game jam or a studio or just in an office and you're trying to come up with ideas, it can be very challenging to come up with ideas without jumping over somebody or giving up agency of your idea. And yes, and there's a way of doing that. So rather than like we're going to come in and do my idea, like let's say we've signed up for the Go Godot Jam with our time machine because it's finished, but we're going to do a game together. And I say, okay, Mikey, we're going to do this game. At what point does Mikey invest in that idea? So Mikey, how does yes and actually play?
You say yes and you carry on the conversation. So you're not actually putting down anybody's ideas.
Oh, it's Durgan. Hey, Matt. Yes. So you start with a prompt, and the rules of yes and are: one, you take the other person's idea. You are not allowed to shut it down or to contradict it. You can't undo anything that's been said. Two, you say yes, and I take your idea, I build upon it, and I give it back to you. And what you end up with is a system whereby everyone's invested because everyone's built this idea. No one knew where this was going to go because you can't really steer other people's responses, because when you start doing that, everyone notices and sort of pulls away from it.
Yeah.
So yes, and it's just a very, very silly little party game. And Mikey and I play it briefly. We also play Once Upon a Time. I forgot we created a Frogger musical.
Nice. I was going to say on the yes and it's actually really beneficial just in normal meetings because it's very easy to jump the gun and shut down an idea that someone's having, but perhaps they haven't fully formed their idea yet. So
We also
and
talk a lot about brainstorming for that very reason, because brainstorming is very badly used, especially in corporate environments. Like I talk in the course about how when I was working in finance, we'd have a brainstorming meeting every week and we'd all sit there and the team leader would say, okay, how can we maximize revenue? We could charge more. Great, let's put it on the board. What else can we do? We could work harder. Very good, let's put that up. What else? We could meet customer expectations. Oh, nice. Can you extend that? We can supersede customer expectations. This isn't brainstorming. This is my boss wants me to say things. Let's see if I can guess what they are, which is not a fun game for anyone but your boss. Right? Brainstorming is a much more chaotic party idea that has very specific rules. And when you do it right, and you should be doing it with like pizza and snacks, and if you're old enough, beers and whatever else you've got, right? It's really fun.
are we going to play? Are we going to brainstorm right now? Because I can go get a beer.
I have coffee.
Yeah, I've got a different drug this evening. Coffee.
Shall we play the sales video so we can get a feel for the squids?
I will try and play the sales video now.
I should point out the sales video was done like an hour ago, so Mikey doesn't actually have a copy. He's going to the site to.
Yeah, I'm going to play it for everybody here. I can shut my mic down, but I can't shut yours, Yann.
I can observe. Would you like to get better at having consistent, creative ideas when you need them? Do you sometimes get in your own way or suffer choice paralysis when you're trying to come up with a creative solution? If so, I think I can help. I'm Yann from Canopy Games, and I'm proud to offer you this short little course on creativity for coders. I've made it as concise as I can so you can sit through it in one sitting if you need to, and I've come up with a whole bunch of tools and techniques to help you realize that creativity is a skill and that there are exercises you can use to help you get better at it. I come from a background of theatre and theatre education. I've been teaching creativity in various forms for around 10 years now. I've worked with students aged 6 to 90 in small and large groups and in all kinds of contexts. And I'm going to be introducing you to a whole range of techniques. Some are from the corporate world, like brainstorming and Scamper. Some of them are theatre techniques like yes and once upon a time. And some of them are writing techniques like zero draft. So if that sounds helpful to you and you have a couple of hours to spare, why not take the course? I'd love to see what you can make afterwards.
Hey, I love that. That's brilliant. And where are we? Da, 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 da.
I'm here.
There we go.
Durgan says, where can I buy Frogger the Musical? I think at your local amphibian music sellers, but you could probably go to Frogstar. I don't have a good. I'm sorry. I burnt out all my creativity on editing today.
Oh dear. So yeah, and of course with younger versions of us. When I saw my face come up, I was like, oh yeah.
That's what I looked like before all my mobility failed and I couldn't get exercise. Where can we find them? I don't know, but if you do find them, let us know because we've been looking for them and they're
we
not
would
in
like
my fridge.
Them back.
Yes, I went to look for them at the kebab shop. They weren't in the kebab shop.
Did you have a tasty kebab though?
Boy, did I!
This is not helping old Yann out.
Don't touch Chewbacca. So yeah, I'm really proud of that course. It's a very simple one. We've called it Creativity for Coders. That's kind of where our niche is. But actually, these are just good creativity tips. And a lot of them come from theatre because actors and performers have had to use techniques like this for a while. That's why they play those silly theatre games. It's to get out of their own heads and allow themselves to come up with ideas. So there's some fun little things there. I should probably have done it before the game jam so that everyone would have bought the course and give me all their money and then made great games. But they made great games for the game jam anyway. So that was the thing.
I mean, creativity is definitely a skill. It's something that anybody can learn, and some of us have just forgotten that skill since we grew up. So perhaps if you're a younger
Partly
member of the
forgetting,
audience,
it's partly the way the brain adapts as you go from childhood to
mm,
adolescence to adulthood. Like if you look at a human brain at various stages of its life,
mm,
it's actually structured differently. It's not just that you think differently, which is
very true.
why teenagers seem crazy, because from an adult point of view, they make no sense. But what we forget is that the very things that make teenagers so hard to deal with, right? Really poor impulse control, incredibly unstable emotionally, like really bad at thinking ahead at what their actions are going to do. Like they know that X is a stupid idea, but they'll forget it until like 10 minutes after they've done X, and then they'll remember, and then they'll get grumpy about it. Those very things are also strengths, because when you're trying to come up with
Yeah.
ideas, a lack of impulse control is the same way as saying just go with an idea. A lack of risk analysis means not stopping an idea before you've had it. Which is why when you're 17, you can write really bad poetry and lyrics stories and you don't care, you're just churning them out. But as a 45-year-old toad, if you're trying to come up with things like that, it can be really challenging. Like one of the first things that'll happen, like if I say, Mikey, can you write a song for us on air? Actually, Mikey probably could, but for most people, the first thing they're going to do is go, uh, uh. It's a bit like if I say, Mikey, name a dance.
Polka.
Right. If you get inside your own head and don't let yourself come up with an idea, you'll start going, what's a good dance? I don't know, what's a good dance? But if you just say the first thing that comes into your head, Foxtrot, it's fine. It actually
I
doesn't
don't know
even
why I
matter if it
said
makes
polka,
sense.
but that's awesome.
Right.
Yep.
You don't need to come up with an idea. So the concept is ways to get out of your own head, ways to get out of your own way, ways to build your own games or come up with stories or write better characters. The lecture they are technically lectures I'm most proud of is probably the last one, which isn't really about creativity, but it's about Mary Sue. A Mary Sue character, if you're not aware, it actually comes from Star Trek fan fiction, is a character who is good at everything and has no faults except they're modest, which is not a character fault. Um,
No.
and you actually see Mary Sue's a lot in video games. Like, Mikey, did you ever play the first Watch Dogs?
Briefly. I didn't really
Okay.
get on with it.
So the lead character, Aiden Pierce, who is another one of these strong dystopian men with a dark past and a throat infection. Like they all speak like this, right? Aiden Pierce is a world famous grey hat hacker, so he can go against the law and with the law, and he's both.
Mm.
And a top marksman, and the best getaway driver in the criminal underworld, and a famous masked vigilante that everyone knows about. And he's like, so he just does everything, and he has no personality. So we talk a little bit about how to
Superman.
avoid creating a character like that. Kind of like Superman. Yep. So we talk a little about how to avoid writing characters like that and the difference between a real flaw and a bad flaw. I even talk about how someone a few years back sent me completely unsolicited a character design for a game they were writing. And under flaws, they wrote, has a tendency to make women jealous because they get annoyed that they want him, but they can't accept that he's polyamorous. I'm like, that is a flaw, but the flaw is really self-centered. Like,
No, that's not a flaw that's going to be relatable.
yeah, you can't just give yourself a strength and say, but you know, it's a flaw.
That's the wrong way around.
Yep. So yeah, there's the creativity for coders course. It's a short little thing, nice to have in your back pocket. Mikey, what have you been working out with the blender meshes? Because I saw a little house.
Yeah, you saw a little house. So I went a bit overboard on that and I started playing with a little bit of geometry nodes. Now I'm going to show like a work in progress board so you guys can see a bit of the background as well. So there's this program called PureRef. It's a brilliant sort of infinite canvas that you can put down clips, and so I've taken screenshots as I've gone along. These are more teaching notes more than anything else. But let's switch over and have a look at this grey screen. It's grey for a reason because, yeah. So very early on in the course, you're going to be making a very simple car. We'll be talking about normals and all that, and we end up with a basic 3-point light setup. And within sort of 20 to 30 minutes, we'll end up with a very, very simple low poly car. And I think that even a complete beginner to Blender is going to be able to do that because we only use 3 tools to get that far. And that's really important because you're not really focused on all of the wonderful things Blender can do. And of course, one of the big things I want to really push people to do is actually, here on the barrel. The reason why I've used the barrel here, because it's a very simple object. But do something with your objects. Always make sure you're presenting them somehow. If I just left this just with solid shading, it doesn't really... No, this is a brand new barrel. It is actually a brand new barrel. These barrels tend to look alike, of course. But seriously, if you're creating something, even if you're not going to add color, and this does have materials on it, but if you're not, just render it out with the settings so that people can see accurately the forms. So I've made sure I've tweaked the settings here so you can see the highlights. It's got fake ambient occlusion and all the rest of it. So you know that is more presentable than just a quick screenshot. And you will get far if you start doing that sort of thing. And then we, this was actually inspired by posts I kept seeing when people were creating houses. And of course, when you're brand new to Blender, a house is something that's really easy to create. And you end up with this problem with the ridge. How on earth do you preserve the orientation? And there are a couple of ways of actually doing it. Otherwise, you end up with like this bit here, this, can't remember what they call it, the edge of a house. I'm not a builder. Apex is the top. I can't remember the side bits down here. Someone in the chat's bound.
A squabbly.
Yeah, it's a squabbly. Getting that parallel with the rest of the roof so it's not kinking out. And yeah, build it up, sort of like a little cottage area, make it look, again, visually appealing. Just like I was saying with the barrel earlier. This has materials applied to it, but if you get your settings right, you don't need a load of extra stuff to convey the overall feel and style. And obviously this is a very simple building. We go ahead and add some ground to it. And then maybe play with a bit of a nighttime scene or something along those lines. Smoke and mirrors, that's not a real moon. That's a circle that's illuminated. And this is where I started having a bit of fun. So this is using geometry nodes. Not a particle system, but geometry nodes. I just wanted to try it out. And you'll notice here that the cottage is also slightly irregular. Don't know if we're going to start talking about a lattice modifier this early on. But that's one of the big balances we have when it comes to teaching. There's a really cool thing, but is it going to overwhelm the beginner? So it might not be quite as wibbly wobbly and distorted as this, but otherwise that. And then I twisted the ground. I put a twist modifier on it, so it's bent, and suddenly the whole scene changed between that and that. And obviously there's a bit of a camera angle difference, etc. But it's amazing, the curved land made it look so much better. And in this particular view, I thought, well, where would you actually view a house from? Very rarely would you be this high up, unless you were looking down from a hill. So just moving the camera down to a better place. Thinking about composition, rule of thirds, and all of that as we go as well. Have we got something else down here? Yeah, just a little low poly tank. I'm thinking of a few other models that we could do. This one is when we start talking about curves. So you can probably see here that the rope bridge... This would be a pain in the backside to try and model if you weren't using something like the curve system.
Oh, yeah.
And this is probably...
that'd be awful.
I would say this is probably be too detailed, but actually it's still... I would class it as quite low poly. I mean, the wooden struts certainly are. They're just extruded cubes. But and I'm thinking about some extra curve activity at the moment. That sounds a bit weird. But
I'm also thinking about some extra curve activity right now. But this is a family show, so let's...
Welcome back! Yeah.
It's looking really good. We also, for those of you who've been following us, we released our first asset pack last month. And And a few people have been looking at it recently and talking about maybe use it for the jam. And a couple of people have said, "Are you going to make more?" And Mikey and I have been talking about this. We don't have any
Yes.
fixed plans for what they're going to be. But Michael, you said that you might be in a position to start making a few assets toward the next pack
Yeah.
every week soon. Do you have an idea of what asset pack you want to work on next?
Absolutely not. So yeah, if people in the audience have any suggestions, I'll take them. Yeah. So there are times when the kids are around that I'm often playing and experimenting in Blender and coming up with cool things to do, etc. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, I could actually make a couple of assets here, and I gave Yann a quick shout and said, if I go off and make like 20 assets, is this going to be a problem? Because we don't want just to create assets. We want to make sure they're ready to use in Godot, whether they need collisions or whatever it happens to be.
I mean, that's
ready
the
to
big
go.
thing about the course is that it's not the course. The assets that we made is that
Yeah.
they're just drop in, they're good to go. They're not optimized for Unity. They're not optimized for Unreal or Game Maker. But if you were using them in Godot, drop them in, they'll work.
Not
Like-
yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, there is a possibility in the fullness of time we'll expand the packs so they work in other engines as well. But other engines require different export settings. So, for instance, in Godot, you could go _col only, or colony, as I read it out and got very confused. So col only is just a collision. So if you had that barrel we saw earlier, you could put a simple collision shape over the top of that _col only. It won't render. It knows to hide the mesh. It knows it's going to be a collision. Now, if you were doing that in Unreal, I think you need the _u, or at the beginning, UCX _ or
I haven't looked at Unreal in years, so I don't know.
I can't remember. But yeah, there are different structures that you need to have for each individual model. And in order for that to really work, I would have to sit down and write a script so that it would rename things appropriately. So I would name it something.
I
And then
want
the next
somebody
one
who's
would
comfortable with
be-
the engine to go in and make sure, like,
Yeah.
everything rotates correctly, they're all oriented the right way, the scales work properly.
They're U assets essentially for Unreal, and the same for Unity. There's far more value to have if you know you're bringing in assets and it already has particle systems attached to it. If it already has the appropriate collision shapes, if it already has materials, and it works. So in the Godot assets,
Some of the
they're TSCNs.
Yeah, so scenes ready to go. Like they're not just meshes. They're scenes. We put collisions in and particles when we need them, and you can modify them and use how you. So the ones I've been thinking of to sort of go hand in hand with the dungeon kit we made, which we could show off in a bit if you like, is in fact why don't I link to the dungeon kit while we're talking?
Yeah.
Is
I can do that while you
either
talk.
a village kit, like a medieval village kit, or a tavern, because I'm kind of working on this prototype for an RPG, although I've been off moving house, all the rest of it.
Busy, isn't it?
It's been very busy. And I feel like those are sort of the next natural place to go. So maybe an indoor tavern interior or just indoor medieval house interior with tavern bits possible, or a medieval village. Part of that is I've spent the past few years living in little English villages. And if I have to do it, you all have to. But part of that is they're useful for all kinds of fantasy games.
But in all seriousness, we are really blessed in the UK with the fact that we can go into most new cities in the UK and have a completely different feel, and then go 50 miles that way and end up with ye old, medieval style buildings. And it's just amazing what we have.
At least before the pandemic, we could.
Well, we're starting to open up now, so
We are starting to open up, which is
hopefully,
good.
apparently, I don't know.
Maybe.
I've been able to see
yeah.
people, which is good.
So part of me is thinking like a medieval interior / tavern kit, medieval village kit, but we could also go like sci-fi kit or, a garden kit, or I mean, there's all kinds of food. We want to keep within the same basic aesthetics so that you can have multiple kits in your game and that they're not going to look weird.
And certainly for the moment, they're all going to be low poly in style. There is.
We want to keep them
Yeah.
like they're one line of products. Partly because it's better for branding, and partly because it means if we make a pirate kit and you've got a medieval village kit, you can put them both together and you have a good game. Pirate kit's actually a fun idea.
Arr, I agree. As long as I get to make it with some
I
gold.
agree too.
No, I mean, there are plenty of options for us to go with any of these asset kits. And what we will start doing in the fullness of time, what we'd like to do is make sure that these kits or subsets of these kits are available in our courses as well. Which means that when you're creating the game in a course, you've got access to assets straight away that work as well in Godot. And if we branch out into other engines, they'll work in those other
This is
engines
really
as
the
well.
starting point. Is when we're starting playing around with this RPG, which I can try bring it up so people can see what we're talking about, because I know not everyone
Yeah.
has been following us constantly. Let me bring this up on
And
this
I
monitor.
apologise for continually drinking. It is just water at the well, that was coffee, but this is water.
I apologize for the fact that I see Pixely on YouTube. Discord is messing with us, and we don't know why. But let me open my RPG sandbox and share my
So
screen.
warm.
Let's go there. Moink.
Now, I think we've settled down. You've not been that pixely in a while, actually.
That's good.
And I've stopped dropping frames as well, which is also good. That probably means one of the kids.
I'm going to slow down here, though, because my computer doesn't like streaming this yet. But okay. So this is me playing around with plugins. So this character is going to have to be remade. This is just a very, very simple.
Give me a moment, Yann, so I can make sure that everybody can see.
I'm just going to moonwalk.
So they can kind of half see at the moment. There we go.
Okay. So this is me playing with plugins. So there's the God Rays plugin, which is lovely. There's the Pipe Map plugin with a little painted texture thing I made for it. We're using the Scatter plugin for all these plants and for the fence over there. We're using the Rivers and Waterway plugin. So we've actually got water physics going on. So if I keep this barrel in there, it should. If I keep this barrel in there, it should start floating downstream. Okay. So all of this feels like, this is why I'm thinking like a village area, like between going into your loot runs, that's where it goes. But you go down into the dungeon, and that's where we start showing off the asset pack we've actually made, which is here. So here we are in this lovely remodel dungeon. Yours for the simple asking price of £15,000. A little bit of work needs to be done on the ceiling, as you can see, and the walls need refinishing. But yeah, all these potions, these books, they're part of the asset pack. The table, the chairs, the benches, everything on them.
Everything in the
skulls,
dungeon is part of it, isn't it?
Everything in the dungeon. So we've got this room full of skulls over here. We've got this throne room. Like, the idea was to make something you could just drop in your game, put some lighting in, because that's a lot of what's making this look pretty.
Oh,
also,
go back to that torch on the wall. I'm either tired and imagining it. Doesn't that the shadow kind of look like an eagle?
A little bit.
Only a little bit.
But
okay.
Doesn't the white bit on here look like a skull?
Did you draw that? Yes.
But it's designed in such a way so that you can take any logo you want and put it on these banners. So
awesome.
You can replace the logo. You don't have to use that logo. That's just a placeholder. Same with the books over here. So if I can zoom in on the book, I can't zoom on the book, but there we go. We've also got these fun little chests, which and a whole bunch of sarcophagi with little lids on them. Like everything in here is just designed to be used how you want them. I've also like this whole level is a grid map, so you can just paint it. Like it's ready to go. You can just plug it the grid map scene that I give you, and it'll just paint the level.
Are you set up to show the grid map being painted? Because it's I love watching that happen. I,
Okay, new scene. Hi, Mikey. That's the name of my scene. It's
that'll do.
actually how you spell Mikey. There's a dash between the I and the K.
Mikey.
Okay, so then I go to my assets, and I go to my Canopy dungeon, and I go to building tiles, and I instance in my grid map. So it's going to take my grid map, and it's going to take my grid map. There we go. All right, so look at my grid map, and I go paint, and then I'm going to put in a door. And paint, and maybe a door over here. Add some walls, and there's my corridor in over here. Boop, and the corridor to my corner. Like this is as complicated as we want to make it, right? We don't want you to have to spend half an hour getting the asset to play with the engine, moving all the origins in the right place, rescaling everything, having to change the mesh so that the mesh has the center of gravity in the right place. In this, if you want to bring in, let's say, a drawbridge,
Well, ultimately, one of the reasons
it will
why
just work.
we wanted to do this was we were fed up of having to modify asset packs every time that we've.
Like when you rotate the drawbridge, it'll just work. So yeah, it's exactly that. Like there's a bunch of really good 2D and 3D asset packs out there. Notably Kenny, Quaternius, there's some fantastic CC0 3D stuff. But you're getting assets that are designed primarily for other engines, that are made by people primarily when they've got the time, and aren't always consistent. So if you just bring in a Kenny or Quaternius piece of furniture, and you say this is a rigid body, and then you say go, the physics is going to be in the corner, not in the center. So the center of gravity is in the corner of your desk, so your desk is possessed. So we wanted to make that nice and simple. This house and these plants are all by Z-Sky, not by us. I'm thinking we should make a little village just to fit this theme. Eventually, we want to turn all this into a course, right? So how to use all these plugins, how to set up scatter to get all this greenery looking good, this little rose garden over here, how to get the sunlight looking, and we've also got like the way the palettes are working. When I'm outdoors, I can press a magic button and change the time of day. And
Yes.
so we'll do this with load.
I mean, I like that. Nighttime, daytime, nighttime, daytime. Yeah, okay. But obviously this is early stages of prototype, trying to put together an RPG, and obviously RPGs can be quite a vast topic to try and teach and cover. And we would like to move towards making one where Yann and I keep talking about in the background different types of control systems, and it's the control systems that we're trying to nail down at the moment in order to govern the style of game it's going to be. Is it going to be a
this is something that people can help with, exactly. Like, are we making a Diablo style RPG, which is a lot of fun, or are we making something more like a CRPG, like Baldur's Gate or Divinity: Original Sin, which are fantastic games but a very different feel? Are we making something more like the original Ultima games, which are all first person and
Oblivion,
grid-based?
Skyrim, they were first person, and it gives a different perspective on the world, and ultimately governs things like assets. It governs
the kind of game
the
we're
overall
making,
design.
honestly.
Yep. Not Quitch over.
So that's not Quitch over. Matt, what you talk about? The big question here is what kind of experience we want. What's the essential experience of the game? Because we could make a very slow and thoughtful game. We could make a really loud and bombastic one that feels like Torchlight or Diablo, or even something like Orcs Must Die, which is a third-person action tower defense game against waves of orcs in a dungeon. Like that's an option. Like we can do that. Or maybe this is something a lot more thoughtful and stat heavy, and like really weighing down which of these two bits of wood you want to use, because there's a big choice going on.
Yes, it was the table.
Oh, you want to see the table knocks over? Oh yeah, we could do that. Let me get my God open.
Yes. Everything did shift, and usually Yann does make a complete mess of that room, so it was just unfortunate that didn't happen this time.
One time you don't trash a room and everyone loses their minds. Come on, back. No, come on, back.
Break the room. Break the room.
As William Shakespeare once said, let the bodies hit the floor. He might have said it, you don't know.
He probably
I
did.
kind of reach out once more. It's my Shakespearean. What was that group? Drowning Pool.
Fair enough.
Yep.
So let's go down.
I know my classics. Okay,
There it
so we're
is.
down in the
Full
dungeon
speed.
with a little god right there. Huh?
Full speed.
And just for Durgan, because I know he'll appreciate this, we can go play Skull Sucker.
Oh, there we go. It disappeared for a moment.
Oh no. So yeah, there's all these skulls. There's little bits we haven't shown you, like these bits. Like you have to wire in your own damage system because right now they're just fun elevators. We've also got.
It's a good job you didn't put bounce on the character. Ooh, potion room.
Yeah, this lovely little cauldron here with this very dramatic green light. When shall we three meet again? I'm busy till Tuesday. We've got some lovely candles that Mikey made. They're all on the floor over there. These braziers, not braziers, which is a different word.
Yeah.
Some more corridors. I'm trying to find a specific bit. Here we go. And of course, this bit. Excuse me.
I mean, it's a bit of a redundant drawbridge because there's a bridge next to
I wanted to see how it worked and to test this little lava trench and this bridge here. Like, in short, bite me, bite me, bite me.
Do I want to go om nom nom right now? No, I'm feeling.
So yeah,
Oh,
one thing I do want to do is get some actual like characters in here because I think these skulls are a great start to skeleton NPCs, which would be a lot of fun. The problem we've got is I keep coming up with fun things like I want to double tap and roll or double tap and shift and slide. And Mikey's like, so I have to animate all those. Like, well, I'm not doing it. You're the Blender teacher. I just do the coding. Although, that said, I made a lot of this pack. I didn't make all of it. I made a lot of this pack. So my Blender skills are slowly getting there.
That looks like a sparkler on the floor.
Yep. You may have noticed, by the way, that all these things have weight, but when I'm hitting them, they're flowing like polystyrene. There's a reason for that, and it's because this character is a kinematic body, and these objects are rigid bodies. Rigid bodies respond to inertia. Kinematic bodies have infinite inertia. So if you want these tables to actually slow the character down and move, you have to basically find a way of figuring out inertia and transferring that yourself. Like Godot doesn't know because the kinematic body has no mass, so it can't figure out the inertia. Which also just pushed a
it's a common. I'm going to call it an oversight. It's a common oversight in a lot of games that have physics, where if your character hits something, it just moves it around like it.
This is my goth chair.
The candles aren't.
So yeah, look, I'm only one man.
Light the candles.
So yeah, that's. I didn't put a thing on them.
Never mind.
Jump down to the lava pit. So the problem with jumping down to the lava pit is there's no way back up. So we're just going to be stuck down there. Yeah, so the problem with the kinematic body is it doesn't have a mass property, so you can't figure out inertia. So you the coder, have to do some fancy things, or make the character a rigid body, which means that you're now moving it a different way.
Yeah. So and again, you know, this is all
stuff we would cover in a course.
Yeah, it's difficult because again, it depends on what style of game you're going for. In our particular game here, it might be that if you fall in the lava, you die. I mean, there might be no way of getting up. Yeah, pretty common issue with lava pits is death. Yeah.
It is a pretty common issue with lava pits, which is why I had the one in my house removed when I moved in here. I'm feeling a very fast and agile action RPG with WSAD. Lots of, you pick a class maybe at the beginning of the game. There's different weapons have different abilities, different stats, or different attack styles. But it's all about positioning yourself with the keyboard and mouse or the controller, and picking up lots of fancy loot. But maybe it's not that. Maybe people would rather have like a turn-based CRPG.
And again, these
So
with the way that we're covering things at the moment, these would all be like a modular system. So movement and attack might be taught completely separately to an inventory system, or whatever. Level design. Level design is a whole topic on itself that people can use again and again and again in loads of different scenarios.
do we do procedural generation? And what kind of procedural generation? Like it might be, and this might be a Kickstarter stretch if we go the Kickstarter route. It might be that we create and do a little module on how to create these little rooms that can be added to a library of possible rooms to come up. So we don't do the procedural generation like we did in Godot Getaway, where we just make a maze and plot buildings down. It was actually the opposite way we did it. We plopped building down and then we cut a road through them so it looked like a city.
Yeah.
And then like remove bits so you have junctions. Here we'd probably have to do something like there's a number of rooms, some are rare, some are unique, some are common.
Yeah.
They can have these kinds of things in them, spawn them to these rules, put the right kinds of things in, and then find where the enemies can go.
And if you get the balance right,
which
you
is,
get a really good replayable game and not overly repetitive, which is ultimately the benefit of a procedural dungeon system, is that you don't know where you're going. There should be a surprise.
Maybe we do a roguelike, or a roguelike supposed to.
And of
like
course,
maybe that's a thing we want. So if you guys have strong feelings,
you can mix up the two. Of course,
on
you
this
can,
or anything.
you can have a level that has corridors connected. So the corridors and all of that stuff is all procedurally generated, but it has to link up with nodes. So then you can actually have your big boss battle in a particular type of room. So you can curate the.
I did think that there's a specific boss I kind of want to make. You know that room with all the pillars in it?
Yeah.
I want a big ogre who has a pillar as a club, just so I can have the my pillar guy.
Oh dear. Only if I get to animate the ogre picking it up, and pulling part of it out, and like the ceiling.
I liked it so much, I bought the pillar.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Oh, what's that?
I mean, part of it is
Scope
I'm working
creep.
on a Slay the Spire-esque co-op game with grid combat like Ogre Battle 64. That actually sounds amazing, Brian. I still have to play no, not Slay the Spire. Slay the. I still have to play that game with the Spire and the cards. It looks amazing, and a lot of people I know love it. I've yet to try and play it. I've been playing a very similar game this week, Shadow of War. It's not very similar, but it was on sale. And I found myself being on the orc side a lot. Like, I just like them better than any of the humans in the game. They're just funnier. So, yeah. It's a bit of a writing problem. I'm trying to save it for Gondor. Like, I don't really care about Gondor. I'm kind of Team Mordor at this point.
You can't really side with the other side either.
No.
That's not really a choice the game gives you.
No. So yeah, if you guys have any specific, like, when we start, I mean, we're prototyping it now, but when we start getting ready to release the very early betas and this course is coming up, potentially, if it's going to be large enough, crowdfunding to see how big a course we can make. And this is the real problem that Mikey and I have. We keep making games we want to play, which means we keep developing them as if they were games rather than courses, which is where the scope creep comes in.
Yeah, definitely.
But what kind of RPG would you guys be interested in? You don't have to all shout right now.
No.
The orcs are really endearing.
That's the thing, though.
But
When it comes to teaching versus creating a game, there are parts of creating a game that are just, we're going to do this thing now 30, 40, 200 times. It doesn't, and that's not really a learning experience. And often, we'll fade in and fade out. We genuinely have to do that as part of the teaching experience. But it's we were talking about it the other day when we were deciding, if we go ahead and do this, and then a load of other developments came from it, other ideas, and we're like, and how would that affect the teaching? Because ultimately you could probably teach that in a couple of lectures, but if you developed it in a more game development style, then it would be more like 10 or 20 lectures, because you'd be exploring the entire in the entire setup, which is completely different. Because often when it comes
one benefit of doing a sort of modular course, right,
Yeah.
is that if we wanted to, we could have a module go into that deep dive for that area.
Yeah, I think that's where the modularity of it will really come into benefit. So when we're talking about level design, as an example, then we can really go into character flow, how you're going to move through the level. That's always something
I
that
think a mini module or part of another module on aesthetic or something would be lighting, because a big part of that dungeon is the way it's lit. And this, the only reason I got it looking like that so quickly is I have a background in theater lighting. So it was just like, well, I know what a key light is, and if I fill light, I know what the ambient temperature is supposed to be. I could just light it like this.
Well, I was talking about that earlier with a 3-point lighting system. So you have your fill, you have your rim light, and you have your key light. But that only works from the idea of the camera, of a single shot. When a character in a game has the agency to just walk wherever, lighting is suddenly a lot different. Key means something completely different, because you're lighting it not from one specific viewpoint.
You also have to, do you want moving lights? Because if you don't have moving lights, you can bake the lighting and get much better performance. So basically, you tell Godot, create a second UV map for this object. So the way that the textures are wrapped around the object, make a new one of those, and we're just going to put lighting on this. So figure out where everything is right now, bake the lighting into that texture. So paint the lighting onto it, and now it's just part of the texture, and now we can get rid of the lights. That's great. But the moment you have fireballs flying around the place, or candles being dropped off the table, or a player with a torch or a lantern, those moving lights will make the textures look really bad. Yeah. Because you move and the shadows don't, or the highlights don't. So
you can have a mixture of both, but you have to be really, really careful, because if you baked your lighting, you have an area that's actually black, then you've got a problem, because when you come past with a dynamic light, it will be impossible for that dynamic light to make black anything other than black. And that's where you start.
And you've also got things like, you've got your character's high-end fancy plate mail or whatever they're wearing, or a bag on their head, and you've got the everything's baked properly. So you've got the highlights, the shadows. It's a bucket. You've got a bucket on your head, and you've got the highlights, and it looks beautiful. And then the light source moves, and the highlight doesn't move, and suddenly it looks like someone's painted a bucket.
Yeah.
And that's not the look you're going for. Daniel says, hi, Daniel. Any RPG, once it shows the infantry systems, animations, and interaction between items and players. I think there's value in that. Yeah. Maybe I'm overthinking this. I'm kind of thinking a loot pinata kind of again, going in and just finding lots and lots of things, because there's a lot we could do with procedural inventory and making Mikey make a whole bunch of procedural loot that we can find, like swords and axes and things. And then the code generation behind that and how to make it, because that's a fun system.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking like anything as crazy as Borderlands, but if you want to make anything as crazy as Borderlands, go for it, Mikey.
Well, it goes back to the teaching again. Once someone has the skills to build a modular weapon, they can go off and run with it and do 200 modular weapons if they wanted to.
The other thing is, and we keep talking about this, we'd like to get to the point where we have something that needs a better name called the asset repository, whereby if you guys make some assets that you want to share with the community, someone else can take the specific axe you've made or the skateboard you've made or whatever it is and put it in their game.
Yes.
And vice
That'd be
versa. So
amazing.
if someone's made a few bits of level music or whatever else, you guys can go back and forth. Now, we'd have to figure out what the rights are going to be on these things, because if people want to make them in the games and share them or release them or charge money for them, that suddenly becomes an issue.
Yeah.
But if we can figure out the time and the money to work on that as a back-end system, that would be lovely, especially as we have a lot more Blender content now. And I'd love to get some more Arda content. Mikey and I have approached somebody asking if they'd like to do a pixel art course for us, because they do really good pixel art, and I think it'd be great. And they said, well, let me think about it. So I can't tell you anything about that. So I didn't tell you any of this. So none of that just happened.
Well, I've just learned about it. That part of it, anyway. No, it's. I mean, pixel art is a whole genre by itself. It's got so.
What's interesting about pixel art is bad pixel art is instantly forgettable. Like no one notices. Good pixel art just stays with you. Like it just looks incredible.
You often have to consider your form. I mean, this is something that 3D artists also have to do, or just normal 2D artists. Form comes first when you're dealing with pixel art. Is the silhouette that you're creating identifiable? If it's not, then you've not got something that's memorable. You don't know what that object or what that character actually is.
Brian says, I really do want more pixel art courses. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to. I mean, it's not a skill I have. I went and prepared some assets for one of the partners of the Go Jam stream. Bitbrain was doing a game at 180 minutes, which then inspired us to do a game in 90 minutes, which was tense. It was tense. But what I did was I took the 3D, because I started trying to make pixel art, and I was like, oh, I'm out of my depth here. So instead, I took the 3D ones and took an orthographic shot of some of the assets and turned them into pieces. Like, there you go, that's good enough for now.
Yep. You can do that straight in
But
Blender
I'd love to get,
well.
like, I'd love to get some pixel art assets on our stuff as well. Like, I think there's a lot that we can really run with it. Pixel art or 2D assets are not as big a problem bringing into Godot, so I think there's less of a need for them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. And you can get away with quite few assets in a game if you use them well and you've got the right assets. Things like duplicating and scaling and rotating and moving them around to a different angle.
And honestly, just using them well.
Yeah, I've created pillars before for an isometric game that when you view them from one side, they look all brand new, and when you view them from the other side, so the developer, when they're putting them in, just has to rotate them 180 degrees, and they've got ones that look different. And that's just one simple way of being able to do that.
Well, I remember when we were making Godot Getaway, we realized we could quadruple the amount of building assets if we just made it so that the buildings looked like the front of the building from all four sides and then randomly rotated them and replaced them.
Yeah. Made such a huge difference.
So we're coming up to the hour. So do you guys have any thoughts, questions, concerns, interpretive dances, jingles?
Nice.
Yeah.
Tiger. I'd really like to add another music course to our repertoire.
I would as well. That'd be amazing.
I either want to. I mean, medieval music would be quite fun to do. I could go and get the recorder out. Or I'm a bit into my synthwave at the moment, so let's do a cyberpunk RPG.
Medieval synthwave.
Has that been done recently?
I mean,
we
not
could...
well.
not well. So there is scope here. Yes.
I was actually talking about this on Jade the Kobold stream for the Go Jam thing a couple of days back. And I still don't understand the game design decision in Cyberpunk 2077 to have all the gear linked to your clothes and then put in money and a street cred requirement, which means that I will go into a store and want to buy some jeans and be told you're not cool enough to buy these jeans. Like, why is that in there? That just doesn't feel good.
I think I've mentioned this before as
medieval
well.
music is my new favorite genre.
Cyberpunk medieval.
Roderick's.
Okay.
So there is such a thing on YouTube called bardcore, where someone makes medieval and Roman covers of rock songs, primarily.
Yeah, I've heard them.
I think there's a Roman cover of "Smells Like Teen Spirit" in Latin.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen that one.
Which is kind of amazing.
I was just going to say, I think I might have mentioned this before on a previous stream. It's similar to that. Need for Speed Heat has a mechanic where you don't have enough cred or reputation. They call it reputation. That's the currency to buy this car. I'm like, no, that's not how it works in real life. If you got $1 million in the bank, you can buy that car. But you can't get this special
$1 million. You have a reputation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cyberpunk medieval music. I might give that a go. It's your fault, Roderick, if this goes wrong.
I'm wondering what you could do if you brought those two genres together.
What, cyberpunk and medieval?
Yeah, like as a game. Like, I don't think you could bring the themes together.
I was going to say, if you brought medieval architecture across, you would end up more like steampunk than cyberpunk.
Well, steampunk is more Victorian and Regency, but I'm thinking like the ability to. Okay, so you pick up a broadsword or a dagger or whatever, and you have your hand removed and replaced with the thing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like, you can't use the themes of medieval Europe and cyberpunk because cyberpunk is very much a reaction to late capitalism. Like the commodification of the self, and the lack of public space, and the corporations creeping into everything. The dissolution of identity, none of which makes sense in a medieval setting. Like, those are not medieval thoughts. So you can't do it that way, but there might be a fun way you could do it together.
This is a great opportunity to play Yes and, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, off the back of that creativity course that you guys should all buy 16 times, I think that you could actually come up with something interesting. You could come up with something terrible, but you could come up with something really interesting.
Wow.
Or you go the other way. You make a cyberpunk game where everything has because cyberpunk tends to have a very Japanese sprinkling.
It's often a lot of neon.
If you gave it a more. There's a lot of neon. There's a lot of slanted roofs, like pagoda slanted roofs, and street samurais, all the rest of it. But I'm wondering what happens if you make a lot of people wearing tabards and people playing those long bugles, and go with that aesthetic in a futuristic sense, like a neon feudal. Which I think is a space opera, now that I'm saying that. That sounds like a space opera.
It does. I like the idea of bringing medieval concepts into the future rather than trying to take cyberpunk futurism back to medieval times. I think that would actually work. A neon castle, if you... How would architecture be affected if you brought that sort of old world style forward? I think that could work.
The history nerd in me is wanting to start talking about the impact of the introduction of glass and the shift from power as land to power as money over the late medieval, early Renaissance period. But I think a less nerdy response would be, imagine a big corporate skyscraper that's made of rounded towers with very thin windows and crenellations.
Yeah.
But it's all glass and steel.
That could work.
I think there's something you could do with it. I mean, yeah,
Oh,
follow. Yeah, I mean, well said, Durgan. It So Scott Olson Card makes a point in his guide to writing sci-fi and fantasy. I'm not a big fan of Scott Olson Card as a person, but this book is worth reading. Um, that at a certain point, all fantasy is actually post-apocalyptic sci-fi
mm-hmm.
because low fantasy is in the ruins of a golden age, all these forgotten pieces of power and magic and all the rest of it, which is basically Mad Max, right?
Yeah.
And high fantasy is the rediscovery of all these things. So rediscovering this golden age, and everyone has flaming swords, and giant eagles carry wizards, and all this business. But they're based on the ruins of an old world. Like the Tolkien has been so influential that people will not let that thread go.
No.
So you can make an argument. And in fact, the role playing game Numenera is based on this. It's a fantasy game set 1 billion years in the future after several massive galaxy spanning civilizations who have done things like stop the stars from dying out and, really. And they've just left these like magical items everywhere. And it's the middle of a dark age. Like no one can read and write. No one knows what's over the next hill. But I found this little bit of metal. And when you do this, that mountain blows up.
Oops. Hey, just 3D things. How you doing?
Hey, just reading things. So yeah, I think we should do a wrap up. So coming up over the next week, we have Michael's next installment of the Blender Creative Suite.
Yep.
Which is called.
Yep. I haven't thought of a good name yet.
Oh.
There will be a great name soon.
Oh.
Yeah, I came up with Polka instantly. Yeah, you didn't ask the question in the right way.
Well, originally we were like, shall we try and release it this week? Well, let's see if we can do it. I thought you'd had a name by then, so my bad. Should have checked.
Nah.
We'll call it. I can't believe it's not better. We've also just relaunched the creativity course, which is not currently linked, but I can. La 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 la. We've also just relaunched the creativity course, which we're very proud of. And we've been talking a lot about assets and role-playing games and the design problems of Cyberpunk 2077, a game so bizarrely skewed, like made with passion and with love, and they really worked hard at this thing. But every time Keanu Reeves opened his mouth, I'm like, dude, just let me play the game. Leave me alone. I don't want to. Just stop it. I don't care about this plot. Which is not a good sign.
No, it's not.
Like I like Keanu Reeves. Here we go.
There we go.
Wait.
Did you?
Is that? No,
Yeah,
that's the dungeon kit. I meant to do that.
I've got it here, I think. There we go.
I got a little onion budgie. Thank you.
What? No. Okay, so if you copy a link that's pasted previously, it changes it to a YouTube specific link. I'm like, yeah,
I got it. It's fine. It's done.
The characters. Nice. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I hope everyone is having a lovely and safe and wonderful time. It's making incredible games and Blender assets and singing joyous songs and keeping cool in this ridiculous heat. Oh, I have a cornetto in the freezer.
Dun, dun, dun.
Just remembered I have ice cream.
Yes.
So that's what I'm going to be doing next.
If you want to boost your creativity, go take Yann's course.
And if you don't, go take Michael's. No, that's not fair. Yeah, thank you for joining us, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week. Come join our Discord. Don't forget to smash that ice cream and subscribe to that like barriers.
Yeah, this is worse than my usual sign-offs. I like it.
I don't have to know. Look, all my millennial friends are busy watching
Tic
Tic
Tac.
Tacs or something.
Okay, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.